You know that feeling when someone gives you something amazing, a huge compliment, maybe a big opportunity, or just a really thoughtful gift, and there's that little knot in your stomach, that voice that whispers, "I don't deserve this." It's kind of like a medieval version of imposter syndrome, and it turns out people have been wrestling with this for centuries. So today we're going to decode a fascinating historical text that tackles that exact feeling head-on. All right, let's get into it. So this is the big question, right? It's a deeply human thing that really doesn't change over time. It could be a spiritual gift, or it could just be a simple act of kindness from a friend. That feeling of being unworthy, man, it can be a huge barrier. So, how do you get past it? Well, the answer we're going to explore today comes from this, a text written over 500 years ago. And it's this raw, really personal account from someone who is struggling with this exact problem. The solution they find is basically a masterclass in what they call the logic of grace. Now, in this context, grace is simple. It just means a gift that is freely given, something you absolutely did not earn, and in your mind probably don't deserve. Okay, so let's start where the text starts, with this overwhelming, all-consuming crisis of worthiness. And I mean, the narrator isn't just feeling a little bit insecure, they are in a state of profound, deep self-doubt.
Wow. I mean, talk about not holding back. Utterly vile and perfectly useless. This is the narrator's completely honest self-assessment before God. They genuinely feel they are the absolute last person on earth who should be getting any kind of divine favor. It's an extreme way to put it, but it's such a powerful expression of feeling totally inadequate.
So here's the bottom line. The entire problem is built on this massive, massive gap between the incredible gift that's being offered and how the narrator sees themselves. How can a useless creature possibly accept a sacred treasure? This is the central conflict that the rest of the text is going to solve. And this is where the logic in the text really starts to get interesting. Instead of God being like, "Yeah, you're right, you are unworthy," and rejecting the narrator, he responds with a whole series of very specific gifts that tackle that feeling head-on. So the text lays out these first gifts, and they're super practical. They're not just abstract ideas. For instance, God just stops the punishment the narrator is convinced they've earned. Their deep humility, that feeling of being vile, gets totally repurposed. It becomes a source of strength. And what's really wild is that they're made into a kind of channel, a conduit for that same grace to flow through them to other people. And this quote just brilliantly lays out the core of the argument. The narrator is called a most unworthy instrument. Just think about that for a second. An instrument's value isn't in the instrument itself, right? It's in how it's used by the musician. The text is making a pretty radical claim here. So the logic here just completely flips the script. Your worthiness isn't even part of the equation. It's totally irrelevant. Your usefulness comes from one simple fact. The giver has chosen to use you, a self-described unworthy instrument, for a purpose. That's a huge, huge mental shift. Now let's see how this concept starts to build on itself, because these gifts aren't just about fixing the narrator's low self-esteem. The grace that's described here has this ripple effect, creating a cycle that benefits both the narrator and their whole community. Just look at this fascinating symmetry. When the narrator prays for other people, those prayers actually work for them. But as the text says, "My prayers shall be turned into my bosom," they also bounce back as a benefit for the narrator. They get comfort, and they become a source of comfort for others. It's this beautiful two-way street where giving and receiving are totally woven together. Okay, so we've seen what the gifts are, but now the text goes even deeper to give us the why. It lays out a set of 5 foundational blessings that are basically the ultimate reason for all this generosity. 5. The text is very specific about this number. And these aren't just afterthoughts. They are the absolute bedrock that everything else is built on. This is the root cause. So here they are. It starts with being chosen, like from before time even began. From there, the narrator is drawn into a relationship, and then that relationship becomes an intimate union. It goes even further, to the point where it's a source of pleasure and delight for God, and it all wraps up with the forward-looking gift of hope itself. You can kind of see the story here, can't you? It's a progression from a distant choice to this close, joyful, and lasting bond. And this is absolutely crucial. The key point is that none of these 5 things are earned. The text is crystal clear that the narrator has done nothing to deserve them. They aren't wages for a job well done. They are the starting point of the relationship, these fundamental conditions of God's love that were there all along. And all of this, every single piece, brings us to the grand conclusion the final piece of the puzzle that the text calls the logic of grace.
The key that unlocks this entire idea is one single word that's used over and over in the text: liberality. It just means radical, free, uncalculated generosity. It's giving just for the pure joy of giving.
And there it is, the final declaration. After listing every single blessing, the narrator concludes that none of it, not one bit, came from their own merit. It's a pure gift, flowing from the very nature of the giver, whose entire character is defined by this kind of generosity.
So let's just recap this whole journey for a second. The narrator starts at rock bottom, feeling completely worthless, and through this step-by-step logic, arrives at this profound understanding. The gift isn't a wage you earn by being worthy, it's an act of pure generosity that's meant to be accepted by the unworthy. The logic isn't about your merit, it's about the nature of the giver.
And that leaves us with a pretty powerful question to think about, doesn't it? This 500-year-old text is making a bold claim. Worthiness is not the point. What might change in our own lives if we started to approach generosity, kindness, maybe even love, not as a transaction to be deserved, but simply as a gift to be accepted? Definitely something to chew on.